All right, and we're live. Welcome into the first Brickyard live show. Definitely excited. Been wanting to live stream on YouTube for a minute now. Need to get a few things figured out. We're working on the podcast as well. So definitely making sure we get everything down tight. Want to focus on the podcast first, but now that everything kind of fell into order, we figured out the thumbnails. I was able to get a laptop computer for my screen, so definitely amped about it. These will be definitely more laid back. I want to do more NBA topics. If anyone ever wants to talk about movies, down to talk about that too, and football, and just going over the news as well, because there's a lot of times where the podcast we're not able to really drop the content in time, or we don't record. We only record once a week. So today, few trades, few people on the trade box. So let me go ahead and get into that, and we can get started. So first thing that was super interesting: Daniel Jones going to the Giants. What's everyone's thought on that? The Giants re-sign him, give him a 4-year, $160 million deal, which I think is kind of crazy, to be honest, because one thing that's always stuck with me and stuck with me since I saw him earlier in the season on Colin Cowherd was Sean Payton. And Sean Payton, the way he was breaking it down is I look at a player on my team and I examine him based upon, is this guy in my Super Bowl window? So pause for a second and think about it. If you're a general manager and you're a head coach, is Daniel Jones really in your Super Bowl window? Is he someone you really believe, you really want to put your keys to the franchise in his hands? And for me, I was fine franchise tagging him this year. I was fine maybe giving him a 2-year deal, maybe with the option on the end of it. But to give him a 4-year, $160 million deal with the potential to earn $30 million on top of that with incentives, I thought that was just a little bit crazy, a little bit out of proportion for the Giants. So I'm not in love with what they did with Daniel Jones. For me, I'm like, get him some receivers first, and I want to see what he does in the playoffs, because if you go out there, draft a good rookie, you go out there, maybe get D Hop or Brandon Cooks. Don't really think you can afford D Hop. And then you can go out there, keep Daniel Jones for that year just to make him prove it, because, well, I like what I saw this year. He was still not throwing the ball too many times. They're protecting him. And I get it. I totally get that you can say, hey, the Giants don't have the receivers for that, but I want to see him do it in a big moment with receivers first. But at the same time, if we're not looking at a Super Bowl window, let's look at it from Brian Daboll's point of view. So you're Brian Daboll, first time head coach. What do you need? Stability at quarterback. You don't really have time to go ahead and draft and develop a new young quarterback. Maybe you do that this year, but with signing him to a 4-year deal, that doesn't really look like it's the plan, or it doesn't really look like it's even in the cards to do that. So if I'm Brian Dayball, I'm like, all right, I want to stay competitive. Down the line, I'll get another quarterback. But what we did with Daniel Jones is working. Let me get a few receivers around him. Let me see how well I can draft and put some pieces around him. We're going to keep Saquon Barkley. The offense is still going to be centered around the run game. So I'm interested to see, but I understand why the Giants did this. Do I love it? No. But if I'm Brian Dable, I'm like, hey, I'm a first time head coach. I need stability at quarterback. I know what I'm going to get out of Daniel Jones. And he did it last year with some limited talent at receiver. So I don't love the money. I don't love throwing around $160 million around for a player like Daniel Jones. Even though I think great dual threat quarterback, but do I see him in the future as a Super Bowl winning quarterback? No, not really. But at the same time, if you're Dayball, you're like, hey, I've seen Jimmy G get to a Super Bowl. I've seen Nick Foles get to a Super Bowl. So in their minds, they actually believe that they can get to a Super Bowl with Daniel Jones, and they actually believe that the salary cap is going to go up, which I think it is. So by the end of this deal, maybe you have a case that this deal's going to age well, kind of like when San Francisco paid Jimmy Garoppolo the um, I forget when they paid him. I think it was a 5-year deal, and they did $25 million a year, and everyone was like freaking out at the time. But as time went on, you're like, okay, that deal kind of aged reasonably, where you can put some pieces around a young quarterback like Trey Lance or Brock Purdy, and then still have enough capital to go out and get someone else. But As far as Daniel Jones, I'm not in love with it. Understand why the Giants did it though, so I'm interested to see the moves they make in free agency, and I'm interested to see also who they draft because I feel like for this year, if you're really going to give him the bag now, you have to go out and get those pieces around him. And for me, if there was a guy who deserved to get paid on the Giants, there was a guy who deserved to get his money, it was Saquon Barkley. The most frustrating thing now is we just saw three of the most used running backs in the NFL get tagged. We had Saquon Barkley, basically all of the Giants' offense last year, and then we had Josh Jacobs, who would carry the ball up to 40 times. He had 40 touches in a few games, and then they're just beating him down, using them up for all they're worth. And then, okay, we're going to franchise tag you until we can trade you. And then some other team is going to go out there, pay you that deal you need. But for me, if I'm a running back and I get tagged, I'm just holding out. I don't care that it's the Giants and that's the team I want to be with. If I'm Tony Pollard, I don't care that it's the Cowboys. I'm Josh Jacobs. I don't owe anything to the Raiders. You guys don't know owe anything to these teams. If I'm these guys, I'm holding out. I'm getting my money and making sure I get that guaranteed contract because you've definitely earned it. Josh Jacobs was the only bright spot on the Raiders last year, and Tony Pollard, with Zeke basically being washed at this point, he was one of the bright spots along with CeeDee Lamb on that Cowboys offense. So for me, you really have to hold out now if you're a running back. As soon as you get franchise tags, time to hold out. I'm not playing this stupid game with my knees. I'm not playing this game where I think I'm going to go out there and get injured. I really need that bag now. So if you're a running back, hold out, um, get that bag, make sure you're getting your money, and then get that job security. Because for me, if I'm Saquon Barkley, I'm like, is Daniel Jones really more valuable than me? Like, think about it, because Saquon Barkley was the one destroying the Washington Commanders in that second divisional game. He was the one dicing them up. Daniel Jones kept throwing him short passes and short screens, and those were the type of plays that were taking them over the top to win games. So Saquon was really the MVP when you take a look and think about it. Same with Josh Jacobs and same with Tony Pollard. If Tony Pollard holds out, the Cowboys offense is going to be pathetic next year. Like, do you really expect to be able to go out there and compete with good teams and make a deep playoff run if you're the Cowboys and you don't have Tony Pollard? So sometimes teams just use the franchise tag to tag a player, get a little bit more time. But if I'm a running back, I'm not taking my chances with playing under the tag and then, oh, one wrong play and then your career goes down the hill. That's why I have no problem with Lamar Jackson not playing in the playoff game last year because you have to think about your long term health, your long term security. I think Robert Griffin III said it best when he was the one who's like, last time I sucked it up and played, it ruined my career because I already had a bad knee injury. I already had several health issues going on, and then I pushed through it with the Washington. At that time, it was the other team, but now Commanders, and then it cost him his career and it cost him his health, which is something that's very unfortunate to see. And I think someone like Lamar Jackson is waking up to it because the Ravens just tagged him. And what I think is interesting is the Falcons and Panthers and Dolphins all announced that they're not interested in Lamar Jackson. When I'm like, why? You can go out there and get paid when you're Daniel Jones and Kirk Cousins, but Lamar Jackson, who's has the highest winning percentage out of any of the young quarterbacks besides Patrick Mahomes. He has a higher winning percentage than Burrow, has a higher winning percentage than Josh Allen, has a higher winning percentage than all of these other guys. Yet he can't get paid when people are already clamoring for Justin Herbert to get paid. Deshaun Watson, who was basically out of the league, went and got a fully guaranteed contract. Kyler Murray got paid. Lamar should be pissed because as soon as he steps on the field, he's worth 10 points for the Ravens. That's how it works. It's like when I'm worth 10 points, you don't put any weapons around me. All you're going to do is go out here and trade for offensive pieces. I think Lamar Jackson has a right to be upset. Lamar Jackson has a right to hold out. And I think if he doesn't work it out with the Ravens, he definitely needs to go to another team because him just sitting in Baltimore playing under the franchise tag, it's not going to make a lot of sense. So if any of the players that get tagged this year, my money is on Lamar to not play because why would Lamar Jackson play under the franchise tag? Like, give me one good reason. And also, why aren't the Ravens paying him? Because clearly the Ravens they think they want Lamar Jackson. They want him to get paid, but I guess the deal is not even close. They're $100 million off. So that's something too that's super unfortunate to see coming into this NFL season. So overall, disappointed in the Ravens, disappointed that they're not able to do a deal with Lamar Jackson. And then the fact that teams are interest is starting to wane on Lamar, I don't know if there's some issues going on or the Ravens are trying to lower his trade value or what, but something's definitely going on. And I'm afraid that Lamar Jackson may or may not get the contract he's looking for this year, but hopefully he gets it. And I hope I'm wrong, and I want him to go out there and get that bag. But we'll see with Lamar Jackson. And then want to talk about a rumor that was going around today. Tom Brady was rumored to come back and play with the Miami Dolphins. So the report is out there that the Miami Dolphins are looking for another quarterback. They're like, hey, Tua had two concussions last year back to back, something that's very scary. Thoughts and prayers obviously go out to Tua. You hope he gets well, but if you're an NFL team, you can't help but think about like, hey, I don't want to be one of these teams that has a quarterback who's perpetually hurt every year, and we have a roster good enough to go out there and make the Super Bowl. We almost beat the Bills with Skylar Thompson last year, so we're really just our quarterback staying healthy away from making a deep playoff run because when you have Waddle, you have Tyreek Hill, you have the speed to get it done. If you go out there and you draft a great running back, I feel like the sky is going to be the limit for the Miami Dolphins if they can find a guy who can just go in there, play consistent, not turn the ball over, and stay healthy. And Tom Brady is rumored to be interested in the Miami Dolphins. Now, I don't believe this completely. I don't think Tom Brady wants to go out like Brett Favre. I don't think that he wants to be one of these players that keeps retiring and unretiring, especially when he has that deal lined up with Fox. And then he tweeted out that it's pretty hard to think about coming back to play football when you adopt your daughter a cat. So definitely something he said in jest to kind of diffuse the situation like, hey guys, not going to Miami. Though everyone would love to see it. Go head to head with Bill Belichick twice a year. Go head to head with Josh Allen twice a year. Go head to head with the Jets again, your old rival and nemesis. So for me, I think all of these rumors were kind of just made up. I don't think there was ever some real traction to them. I think it was a cool idea. And I think the Dolphins were definitely interested in Tom Brady. And I think it was something to be said for how just rumors can spin around the combine because it came where Rich Eisen, Michigan alum, connected to the Miami Dolphins GM, who's also a Michigan alum. And then he was like, yeah, I think Tom Brady is going to come back and play for the Miami Dolphins, which is like, as much as I would love that, and as much as the NFL community would love to see that, it's like, it's not going to happen. The dude's 46. He just made a big deal about his retirement again. The second retirement wasn't as well received as his last one. So, do you really want to go out there and learn a new system? Not really. If I'm Tom Brady, just chill. You're doing pickleball. You want to get in a stand up. You already have that job lined up with Fox, even though I would love to see Greg Olson continue to go ahead and do his thing. I just don't think it's something that's going to happen. So, what do you think about it? What do you think about Tom Brady coming back to play for the Miami Dolphins? Personally, I don't put too much stake in this, but we'll see. Another thing that happened, and I actually called this, I said, there's not really a great argument for Derek Carr going to the Jets. Why do I say this? I think Derek Carr is someone who feels more like a small town quarterback or more like one of those niche, diehard fan bases. Someone who really, for a team that really just needs a guy to go out there and play hard. And well, I think that would work with the Jets. They've just had such bad luck, and I don't think he's a great fit in New York City. And I was like, also, if Derek Carr wants a legitimate chance to make the playoffs, go out there and compete for a championship, go out there and potentially win his division, I'm like, I think New Orleans is the best option for him. And then turns out Derek Carr, member of the New Orleans Saints, so he signs their 4-year deal with them, 100, I believe, $120 million. Yeah, Derek Carr going to the New Orleans Saints, and I love the move. I think Dennis Allen just needs to, again, similar to Brian Dayball, they needed to go out there and just stabilize the quarterback situation. And this is what happens when you really don't know what you want to be. Do we want to ride it out with Jameis Winston? Do we want to put Taysom Hill at quarterback? Do we want to play Andy Dalton? And the Saints really just were going through a transition phase, and the whole Jameis Winston's going to come back and be a star. I just don't think that was ever super realistic. And it's unfortunate because I did want to see him come back and complete the arc where he went ahead and resurrected his career. But Derek Carr to the Saints makes a lot of sense because for me, I didn't think another reason why I didn't think the AFC made sense. It's like you're really gonna go and compete with Josh Allen, Bill Belichick, who also we talked about on the podcast. We have our AFC East preview coming out, and then we talked about how the Patriots actually have the fourth most cap space. So then, not only would you have to go up against the Bills and the Dolphins with the best wide receiving duo in the league, you would also be going up against Bill Belichick with a ton of cash to spend. And part of that's probably going to be on getting weapons for Mac Jones and another great player on defense. Maybe he can pull his magic and pull his weight and go out there and get someone like a Levante David, go out there and get an elite pass rusher, someone to shore up the run defense. So overall, I didn't think it was a good fit. I'm like, you're not going to be able to compete in the AFC. There's too many good teams, and I get you dragged the Raiders to the playoffs last year, and the whole Josh McDaniels situation was just a mess where the team's too poor to even fire that guy. So overall, Derek Carr to the Saints makes a lot more sense. You're going to one of the weakest divisions in the NFL. Buccaneers don't really know what they're going to do at quarterback. Is it Kyle Trask? Is it going to be a rookie this year? Are we going to go after Carson Wentz? We don't know if we're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And for me, Derek Carr steps into a new situation. Falcons, a lot of uncertainty at quarterback. They're not going to start Desmond Ritter or go after Lamar Jackson. So they're probably going to be in the market for a new quarterback. And then also, Panthers, we really don't know at all what they're going to do. Are they going to have a rookie? Are they going to draft Anthony Richardson and try and get the next Cam Newton for that franchise and go young in the draft? We don't really know, but it works in the favor of Derek Carr when you still have a good defense. They were able to keep the Saints in games, and then their record was fairly decent last year. They went 7-10, had a chance to win the division. So overall, I think the Saints were the best fit for Derek Carr. Grab a sip of this tasty beverage real quick. Hopefully, you guys are having a good night so far. Definitely having a good time. First live stream. Please just drop a like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And then appreciate you guys watching. Welcome any new viewers. I'm happy to have you here. But yeah, so Derek Carr, the Saints, Daniel Jones re-signs with the Giants. Tom Brady, is he going to the Dolphins? Is he not? Heard the story before. I think it was more legit when Sean Payton was attached to it, and I think he would have rather gone to Miami than Tampa just because he would have the chance to compete against Bill Belichick and really stick it to the Patriots for not wanting to keep him. So overall, I think it's been a pretty good week for free agency. It's a good start. I like the moves that are being made in the NFL right now. Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Tom Brady, and then another thing I called was at the beginning of the year, towards the end of the season, I said this is going to be the year that the Titans trade Derrick Henry. Now, why do I think that? I feel like the Titans are in this weird transition phase where you have Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry. You traded away AJ Brown, which as soon as you did that, I thought that was the first clue that people would have that the Titans are going to start to rebuild, start to go young, start to kind of reshuffle the deck and find their identity. They tried to draft Malik Willis. Didn't love it. He played at a Division II college, Liberty University, one of the biggest Christian universities in the world. So didn't put too much stake on it just because the level of competition he had in college. So not in love with Malik Willis. Definitely think they should look and see if they can find someone else in the draft. Again, maybe someone like Anthony Richardson, or could be feasible to trade up in the NFL draft this year. So I think the Titans are making the right decision by shopping Derrick Henry right now. I think he still has enough value where if a young team like say the Lions or the Bears that have a lot of cap space can bring in someone like Derrick Henry, and it can really jumpstart their offense because I know D Swift had some internal issues with the Lions this year, and he's had some injury issues as well. So as far as upside goes for a player that could be injured, with D Swift and Derrick Henry, who have both had their issues, I feel like I would rather have Derrick Henry. And I don't know what the asking price is going to be. I think they may be able to get a first round pick for someone, but I think that's a little bit overreaching there. So I think probably a second, a third, and a role player is something more realistic for the Titans. I don't think anyone's really going to mortgage their future, give up a first round draft pick, maybe a conditional pick or a pick swap. I could see them swapping first round picks with the team and doing that. But overall, do I think they'll get a first round pick back for Derrick Henry? No, but I do like that they're going ahead and like, hey, time to trade Derrick Henry. Called it before the season. So overall, think it's a good move for them. I don't really know what teams are going to be too interested. I think the Bills are a great fit, but they may not have the cap space. Talked about it this week in our AFC East preview as well about how the Bills not going to have a lot of wiggle room this year. So they're going to have to clear up some cap space somehow. Definitely going to be losing some players, but I feel like for a team like the Bills who really need that extra element and that extra threat in their offense where we saw versus the Bengals that the Bills look like a dome team in that game, and the Bengals absolutely ran through them. Everyone was concerned. They're like, oh, how are the Bengals going to play in Buffalo? I was like, no, how are the Buffalo Bills going to play in Buffalo? Because if it's snowing, Joe Burrow's from Ohio. That team has that tough outdoor cold mentality. So I thought the Bengals would be just fine. And then the Bills look like a dome team. They look like they should have been playing in LA. And part of that was because they can't run the football. So whether it's an offensive line issue you need to fix, whether it's a running back issue where you need to move on from Devin Singletary and bring someone else in, like a Derrick Henry, or maybe see if you can draft someone else or trade up. But seems like the Bills are pretty inept at drafting running backs at this point, and that Josh Allen, I mean, led the league in turnovers last year. I do expect him to pick it up next year and play better than he did this year, but again, you're going to be losing players on defense. You don't have too much cap space, but if there's a guy I would try and make room for, it's Derrick Henry. And I think the Bills, if they want to really try and compete and bring their offense to the next level, I feel like Derrick Henry's the guy. But I have a sneaking suspicion that he's going to go to the Bills or the Lions because both of those teams have a lot of cap space, have the draft capital to go ahead and get a deal done with the Titans. And I think Titans are now in a position where it's time to rebuild. So overall, do I like the Titans next year? No, but do I think they're taking the right steps to start to look ahead and think about the future? Yeah, I think that's fair. So what are your thoughts? Any of you Titans fans? Are you guys? Do you guys think? Are you optimistic about next year? Do you think the Titans are going to be good next year? Do you think you can get enough back for Derrick Henry to rebuild a team? And do you think Ryan Tannehill is going to be there? Because another guy you could probably move is Tannehill, and I think the best move in the NFL is tanking because it's not the NBA draft where you have the ping pong balls that can fall. You can lose out on the first round pick. So just go ahead, full send it next year, and hey, let's start Malik Willis and see what happens. And we can go out there, just put Malik Willis out. Maybe he gets some experience. Maybe he starts to show some signs of life. Or are we going to roll with Duck Hodges next year and then see if we can get him some weapons and then still suck next year and then draft a quarterback later? I think that could also be a legitimate move for the Titans. So, what do you guys think the Titans are going to do next year? Do you think they're going to keep Derrick Henry, and who do you like? Where would you like to see Derrick Henry go? Personally, I would love to see him on the Lions because I'm just hoping next year that the Lions are world beaters. So, Derrick Henry, what do you guys think about him? What do you guys think about Derrick Henry being traded? And then let me get into some NBA here. Let me take another sip of this tasty beverage. Hopefully, you guys are having a great night. Welcome to any new viewers. This is the first Brickyard live show, so definitely excited that I was able to do this tonight and get it up and running. And then, if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop them below. Okay, transition. So we talked about the NFL a little bit, talked about some players on the move, talked about Derrick Henry, talked about some teams that need quarterbacks, some teams that are franchise tagging their players. And then we also talked about Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Tom Brady, Derrick Henry. But there's a very unfortunate situation unfolding in the NBA right now. And sure, a lot of you have been following what's going on with John Morant right now. And for me, last year, I was one of the biggest John Morant fans there was. I was obsessed with the Grizzlies. Didn't love their chances to win a title, but I liked everything I saw from the Memphis Grizzlies. I love John Morant, Dylan Brooks. I thought the tough, young, gritty mentality with Steven Adams, their head coach, seemed like he was able to get them going. And I loved everything about the Grizzlies until this season. Last year, they got humbled a little bit, although John Morant was out. So I get it that they feel slighted and they feel they could have got to the finals because they did have some really good moments versus the Warriors. However, this is still a team that hasn't proven anything, and they're acting like they're already a dynasty when they're not. And I like trash talking in the NBA. I think it's a good part of the game, and I like seeing altercations like what we saw with Luca, Devin Booker. I feel like that's one of the best stories in the NBA right now. What I don't understand is John Morant is set with his shoe deal, the NBA raising the salary cap. The new contracts are going to be 60 to 70 million dollars. Think about how insane that is and how much you could change your family's just trajectory in life, the generational wealth that he'll be able to achieve. And then for a young guy coming from, um, I'm not sure what his background is, but I'm sure he'll be able to change his family, and it's a lot of money they haven't seen before. And the fact that he's willing to give that all up just to put on this persona where he's flashing guns, he assaulted a 17-year-old and threatened to shoot him. And he's had some other situations. He had the altercation with the Pacers where there was some accusations of John Morant doing some unsportsmanlike things after the game. We'll leave it at that. But I'm not here to say I'm disappointed with John Morant. I'm not here to tell John Morant what to do with his life. What I am here to say is think about how much money you're losing. Because for me, I'm trying to think about how many streams of income can I create and how can I maximize how much money I'm making right now and what are some good investments so by the time it's later on in my life, I'll be able to not only change my life, change my family's life. And that's something I think about all the time. If I'm John Morant, that's also something he should be thinking about because by doing this, potentially chancing going to prison, bringing a gun on a plane, which is a strict no no. It's an NBA policy where you're not allowed to bring a gun on the team play, and it's a minimum 50 game suspension. It's just really disheartening to see. It's definitely disappointing. And I hope John Morant can figure out that, hey, this isn't the best look right now, especially for young fans that look up to you. I know not every player needs to be a role model, but you do have to understand that there are younger people that look up to you and watch, and then you're going to be able to make those people impressionable. And the reason why situations like this are so scary is because you really have to pay attention to the energy that you're putting out to the universe. For me, I am someone who struggled with depression, anxiety, whatever you name it, and then figured out how to kind of control my energy, not talk so negative about myself, and then really learning about how the energy you put out there in the universe is really something that can impact your life. And it's something that can be very impactful and can also manifest things in your life. So the gun waving, the getting in altercations, the I'm the bad boy of the NBA, getting in altercations with other players, inspiring Dylan Brooks to do the same on the court. That energy is something that you really don't want to play with, and it's something that can lead to something worse happening. And that would make me sick to see. Something I never want to ever see happen. I don't want to see anything bad happen to John Morant. I want him to go out there, play basketball, be vocal, be competitive, go out there and talk trash to other players. but keep it all on the court because if I'm an NBA player, I'm not going to think of you as a tough guy if you're out there waving guns and then manifesting that type of energy in your life. I'm going to think of you kind of as a fraud because you feel the need to go out there, show that you're this guy who's going to go out to the club, flash a gun, probably intoxicated with alcohol, and then you never know who's around you. You never know who's going to be at the bar, and also be willing to test you and see if you'll engage in those altercations. Because if you're in a situation where you're out there flashing a gun, someone's going to try you. They're like, all right, is this guy willing to, really willing to throw away his entire career just because he wants to show off this persona to people? And the persona thing is something where I don't even get because I don't understand how John Morant benefits from this at all. Because I guess some kids will think it's cool, but overall, you discredit yourself with the media, you discredit yourself in other NBA circles, and then people are going to kind of want to distance themselves from you if you're putting this type of energy out there. It's not something I would want to be around. It's not something a lot of other players are going to actually want to be around. And then marketing wise, it doesn't make sense because you risk losing your shoe deal, you risk losing any endorsement deals, and you're leaving so much money on the table where this doesn't benefit you at all. It's not helping your career, and you're risking a chance to go in jail by bringing a weapon into Colorado where the Colorado police are investigating you. So, best case scenario, John Morant learns from this is like, hey, oh my God, $200 million on the table, potentially a chance to make $1 billion, change my family's trajectory for the future, create some generational wealth. I woke up and realized, hey, that was a dumb decision. I feel bad about it. I'm not going to do that anymore. Worst case scenario, something horrible happens or he ends up in jail. And I don't want to see it, but it's something that I feel like a lot of people should learn from and steer away from because it's not benefiting anybody, especially John Morant, and it's not benefiting John Morant's career. So I don't even understand why he's doing this, and I don't even understand, like, you're creating a character, and people like Andrew Tate, Jake Paul, Floyd Mayweather, like the great marketers, like are very edgy. They're able to create a persona which kind of triggers people, or there's some sort of shock value to it. But for John Morant, you can do that. Just don't do it illegally, and don't do it by breaking NBA policy, and don't ruin your career for this because you're going to look back when you're older like, was it really worth it? Was it really worth bringing a gun on my team playing when I have a great chance to make the NBA finals? Like, think about it. The Grizzlies are in a very mediocre Western Conference. The best team all season has been the Nuggets, and they only have Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic, although he's on pace to win 3 back-to-back MVPs, they're the number one seed in the West. Still don't have an All Star. Still don't know if Jamal Murray's going to be himself yet. Still don't know if we can rely on players like Michael Porter and Aaron Gordon to show up in the playoffs. So for me, this is the best chance you may ever have to make the NBA Finals. And there's a chance you could be suspended 50 games. And thought it was interesting because they asked Taylor Jenkins about it today, and they're like, Taylor, it's asked on John Morant, and he's like, we're gonna take it day by day. And there's no timetable yet for his return, and he's gonna take some time away from the team. So, what are your thoughts on the John Morant situation? What do you think is going on with John Morant right now? Do you think he's gonna clean it up? Do you think it's going to continue to get worse? Do you think something worse is actually going to happen for him to actually wake up and stop doing these things and stop just flushing money down the drain? He's basically just lighting money on fire in front of him. It's like the Dark Knight. It's like, I don't care about money. I just want to see the world burn. So it's like, not comparing him to the Joker though. But what are your thoughts on John Morant? Definitely want to transition to something more positive. Even though it's not positive, it's at least between the lines, and we actually get to talk about basketball. But just talked about John Morant. Welcome any new viewers. Welcome anyone who's watching live. Good to see your faces in here. And then welcome to anybody who's watching the end of the stream and then catching it on YouTube later. Definitely appreciate that. Drop a like, drop a subscribe if you like this, and then let me know if you want to see more live streams. I'm gonna finish with one topic left in the NBA after I take a drink from this tasty beverage, though. Give me one moment. Yeah, we'll do one more NBA topic. So I was thinking about it, and I think this NBA season comes down to four players. And you're like, well, we have Steph Curry. No, not him. I think it comes down to Jokic, Durant, Giannis, and Tatum. Why do I say those guys? Because for me, it doesn't really matter what Steph Curry does this year because he got his championship without Kevin Durant, and then he got that championship where he could solidify himself with 4 rings and get his finals MVP. So for me, if the Warriors don't make the finals this year, pointing the finger at Draymond Green, it all goes back to him punching Jordan Poole. Not going to put any blame on the Warriors because you won the title last year. It's very hard to repeat, especially in the NBA where you're playing 82 games, then going into the playoffs. But you have Luka. Why doesn't it matter for Luka? And why? Because I think Luka has Kyrie Irving right now. It's not the best co-star fit. I think they did him dirty a little bit by going out there, trading away some assets for Kyrie Irving. So for me, Luka's still young enough where if he doesn't get it done this year, not going to hold it against him. But what I do think is Durant started the season with the story being about him because it goes back to him requesting a trade. Requests a trade with Brooklyn. He's like, hey, I want out of here. And they're like, well, you did just sign a 4-year contract. Let's play it out the season, see how things go. Still some turmoil. Kyrie Irving leaves. Ben Simmons is an absolute disaster. My theory is they just wanted him to wait to see if Ben Simmons was actually going to be good. Once he saw Ben Simmons wasn't good, he's like, all right, time to blow it up. Trade me, trade Kyrie. So he gets the Phoenix. And I think for me, this disastrous situation in Brooklyn will all be forgotten because with social media, TikTok, everyone constantly scrolling, everyone has a short memory now. So if you go out there with the Phoenix Suns, you already look like world beaters and go out there and win an NBA title, Kevin Durant now has a 4th championship. It opens up the door for him to maybe get 5, and then you can argue that he's a top 10 NBA player. So it would elevate his status to a whole new level in the NBA hierarchy. So I think Kevin Durant needs this 3rd ring because he has to separate himself from Kawhi Leonard, even though he's been more healthy and he's had more big moments than Kawhi. Kawhi, you can argue, was the two-way king. He was the claw, and then he won with Toronto, not Golden State. And Kevin Durant still has the asterisk of only winning with Steph Curry, who may be better than him, already has a ring with you, a ring without you. Klay Thompson, Draymond, we know all those players. So he still has the asterisk of winning with the Warriors. All of that goes away with the Suns. While Devin Booker's good, still fell apart in the finals when he had a 3-1 lead or a 2-0 lead versus the Bucks. Excuse me. Um, and then with Kevin Durant, so you have the chance where he elevates himself over Giannis, elevates himself over Kawhi, and then he just separates it like, okay, no, I'm the definitive number 2 to LeBron, and I need one more ring, and I can be right there with Steph Curry. So Kevin Durant needs it this year, and then everyone will forget about the disaster in Brooklyn. Jokic. Why do I say Jokic? Well, think about it. Jokic has 2 MVPs right now, is one of the most efficient big men in the league, and maybe the most talented big man of all time. Now, is he the best big man of all time? No. But when it comes to passing, when it comes to being able to create shots, IQ, shooting, and scoring and rebounding, the combination of everything as a big man being able to push the ball up the court, I do think Jokic is going to go down as one of the better big men of all time and maybe the best of this era we're in right now. However, he still needs to get to the finals. He still needs that NBA ring. And this year is kind of going to be the year where voters, even though if you deserve that MVP, they're not going to keep voting for you every single year. If you don't get that ring, you don't make the NBA finals to legitimize it and then say it's not a fluke what you're doing in the regular season. However, Jokic has never played with an all-star in his career. Jokic has gotten to the Western Conference Finals, but hasn't done too much in the playoffs. He's lost to the Trailblazers and has had a few other tough series, but hasn't had Jamal Murray healthy in a bit. And then Michael Porter, Aaron Gordon, don't know if we can rely on them. But if he brings them to the finals this year, even if he doesn't win, it'll be the most impressive playoff performance of a player since LeBron James with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Why? No other All Stars on the team, and it would be the first time that a player brought a team with no other All Stars except for LeBron. Even LeBron had an All Star, but it's kind of like a fringe player. So for me, I think Jokic can separate himself in the hierarchy of the league as well as Kevin Durant if he brings this team to a finals. I still think Luka's young enough where we give him a pass. Steph, gonna give him a pass this year because went to the finals, won, got his finals MVP last year. So overall, I think Nikola Jokic is another player where the headlines are all about him. You have people like Kendrick Perkins coming out calling him a stat patter, which I think is ridiculous because with Jokic being the back-to-back MVP has created the best looks of anyone in the NBA. He creates the most corner threes in the NBA. And I feel like he's a guy where he really doesn't care about stats at all. He just does what he has to do to win. Sure, could he go out there, average 30 points? Absolutely. Does he want to do that? Not really. For me, I think he's a guy who's fine going out there and having 9 points, but 15 rebounds and like 16 assists. And he's that talented to go out there and do it. And then he just does some awkward, out of pace stuff where kind of like Luca, where they just play the game at a different rhythm. So I think Jokic is going to be one of those guys who is always going to get a bad rap. People are always going to like Embiid better. People are always going to like Kevin Durant and Giannis better, but he's a guy who can really prove a lot this year and prove that he deserves to be a household name and be in the conversation for best player in the league. Do I think he's the best player in the league? No. But do I think he deserves a mention in the conversation? Absolutely. I mean, he's on pace to win his third MVP. He's the number one seed in the Western Conference right now. He's averaging a triple double as a big man and 25 points. He can go out there, get you 40, 16, and 15, which is absolutely ridiculous. So for me, Kevin Durant in the West, Nikola Jokic as well in the West. So let's go over to the East. Gonna take another sip of this tasty beverage though. How are you guys doing? What do you guys think of the NBA this season? Personally, wasn't um, too into it early in the year, but I do think as soon as the trade deadline hit, Kevin Durant going to Phoenix, Kyrie Irving going to Dallas, saw a lot of good action. I think the storylines are heating up. Definitely needed a rebalance of power in the NBA where I feel like we have some good enough teams in the East that it's going to be a competitive playoffs, but we need to get Katie and Kyrie over to the West just to make that playoff, that bracket there needed some more star power, and I think the West got that. So definitely excited to see Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving play in the Western Conference playoffs. What matchup are you guys excited to see in the playoffs too? Awesome. Well, just talked about Jokic, Kevin Durant being two players that have a lot to prove, a lot they can benefit from going to the finals and winning a championship. Two other players that have a lot to benefit from winning a championship this year, Jason Tatum and Giannis. So, Jason Tatum and Giannis are now currently locked on basically a collision course every single year in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Tatum has got to the finals once, gotten to, I believe, four Eastern Conference championships now, and then he's beaten Giannis 2-1 now head to head, where Giannis beat him the first, or Tatum beat him the first time when they had Eric Bledsoe on the Bucks. Kyrie Irving, kind of that whole year for the Celtics, I don't really count, but Giannis still got Tatum, bested him in that matchup, and then the second time around, Celtics were able to beat the Bucks even though they were shorthanded. But hey, the Celtics didn't have Robert Williams either, and if there's one player that can be really beneficial and change the whole direction and pace of a series, it's Robert Williams when he's someone who can be at the rim and stop Giannis. So I feel like you want to say Drew or Chris Middleton being out really had an impact on that series, but you could say the same thing about Robert Williams. So now we have them locked in a collision course again. And I feel like if Tatum wins, he goes 3-1 versus Giannis, finally gets his NBA title, and then him and Giannis would have one and a finals MVP. So you can have a dynamic duo going head to head year after year, and then you have the Eastern Conference version of baby LeBron versus baby Durant, where Jason Tatum, great scorer, great defender. Don't think he's as good as Kevin Durant is in his prime, but I think he has a chance to get there. Just need to see him show up and show out in the playoffs. And then I do think he's a better defender than Durant has been. So also has that going for him. But Giannis, people think better overall player. Yeah, and you can make that case unless Tatum has him in the head to head matchups and has the NBA championship. However, though, if Giannis wins this, gets the Celtics monkey off his back from last year, says last year was a fluke. If we had Chris Middleton, we would have went ahead and beat the Celtics in 5 games, which don't think would have happened, but definitely a possibility. And then he can go to the finals. And then if he wins again, separates himself from Kevin Durant. I feel like Giannis is the better defender. Giannis is someone who can dominate and impact a game in so many different ways, where I feel like Kevin Durant just is way more efficient than everyone else. Can show up on defense at times, but he's not the defensive force that Giannis is. Giannis is a force on defense, whether it's steals, blocks, guarding your best player. So he can go out there, lock someone down, protect the rim, get blocks, and also dominate the offensive glass. And while Kevin Durant's a fine rebounder, Giannis is a dominant rebounder, and he can will a team to victory solely on his rebounds. He's someone who struggles at the free throw line. However, when it mattered in the finals, he showed up and hit his free throws. So I think if Giannis goes out there, wins this year, wins the finals MVP, he's now approaching LeBron James territory where he's not there yet, but he has a chance to go out there, win 2 titles with Milwaukee without someone with the level of scoring talent as Kyrie Irving, without a Dwayne Wade, without Chris Bosh, without Kevin Love, and without being able to just handpick that team that LeBron has been able to do. And then he goes out there without Steph Curry, without like Kawhi Leonard, played with Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, without Klay Thompson, and without Draymond Green there. So I feel like Giannis, his championships, degree of difficulty doing it with the Bucks, a lot harder, and then a lot more impressive to just stay in the same spot, especially in a town like Milwaukee, and win those championships. So I think NBA this season comes down to Durant or Jokic. Expect to see one of those two in the finals unless Steph Curry and the Warriors really ramp it up and turn it around. But I'd be disappointed in both of them if they don't make the finals this year. And then Tatum and Giannis. Tatum folds again this year. Okay. Is Tatum going to start to get the label as a perpetual choker, and that will be fair? And is Boston gonna have to take a look in the mirror and see if Tatum and Jalen Brown can really get it done if they don't win the finals this year? Because for me, it's make or break. And then Giannis, he can open up the door to all of the all-time great conversations to begin this year. Won't be there yet, but I think if Giannis can go out there and win this year, has a chance at 5 titles and has a chance to be one of the all-time greats. And I don't think it's too crazy to say, just with how dominant he's been. So glad to see those players at the top of that MVP conversation. Definitely deserve it. But shout out to Joel Embiid too, having a great season. Dame Lillard, um, and then John Morant unfortunately threw away the Grizzlies seasons. But overall, do you think it's been a good NBA season so far? I think there's some good storylines. So, what do you guys think of the NBA this year? What do you think of my theory that it's going to come down to those four players this year that it matters most for? I wouldn't be surprised to see the Mavericks in the finals, and I think Luca. It would be very impressive if he gets to the finals and won. However, he's so young, I'd be shocked. So a fifth honorable mention, Luka Doncic, even though he's still young enough where I'm not going to put all the pressure on him and I'm not going to put the weight of you got to go out there and get it done this year, which I feel like Jokic, Durant, Tatum, and Giannis repeating, that just opens up a whole different conversation in the hierarchy of the NBA. But yeah, so went over the NFL, went over some NBA. So hopefully you guys had a good weekend. I definitely had a good weekend. I went and saw Cocaine Bear and didn't have high expectations for this movie because what can you expect from a movie called Cocaine Bear? And it's that simple. Basically, cartel, plane going down. We need to throw all this cocaine into the woods. Well, Bear gets into it, wreaks havoc, and I thought the gore in this movie was on point. I thought they did a really good job with that. There's some definitely some funny moments, but the movie should have been at least 15 minutes shorter, and that'll be my complaint with it because I'm not gonna complain about the cheesiness because what do you expect from a movie called Cocaine Bear? But I felt like there was a little too much character development because a movie like this, you really just want the bear to be the star of the show and out there just wreaking havoc and going out there and slashing, killing people in very creative ways, which does happen in this movie. But I feel like for me, I just thought it was a little bit too long, but I thought it was entertaining. Definitely a good movie that if you want to scare your kids into skipping school, there's a storyline with two kids in this movie where one of the kids is skipping school and convincing another kid to come with him. And he's like, hey, why don't you come skip school and hang out in the woods? What's the worst thing that can happen? Well, worst thing that can happen is you get attacked by a bear who's high on cocaine, which is wild. And this is based on a true story, but it's about like 2% of it because the actual bear overdosed within minutes. Like the actual bear didn't survive the amount of cocaine that he ingested. Like that's not something that's realistic. So for me, this is one of those movies like The Meg that's going to be a classic all-time B movie where you watch it every once in a while late at night when you maybe had too many vitamins or you need something to fall asleep to, you need something to eat some cold pizza too. But overall, thought Cocaine Bear was a good time. Ice Cube's son, O'Shea Jackson, did a good job in this movie, and I thought some of the humor hit. And some of the movie, it's like there would just be some dull moments, but overall, thought Cocaine Bear was definitely a good time. I would definitely check it out. Definitely worth a watch. But that's everything I want to talk about. We had some news today. Is Tom Brady going to the Dolphins? Derrick Henry, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr signed with the Saints. Daniel Jones re-signing. Giants tag Saquon. So it's going to be a really interesting NFL offseason. So glad we were able to do this first live stream. Definitely something I want to do at least once or twice a week. So if you're here now watching live or you're catching it all the way to the end and watching on YouTube after, appreciate everyone tuning in and hopefully I see you at the next one.